Hello orchid addicts of all various colors and shapes. It's been a while since I've created an orchid video. Today is the next day after I've created my pansy sowing video, and I don't know if I have uploaded it yet at the moment of the release of this video. But anyhow, I wanted to give you updates on what's going on interesting in my orchid collection. And this general summary up would be, since the beginning of March, my orchids have awoken. So I'm going to make it relatively quick and sweet and show you what's going on without much of a hassle. Okay, first off, my summer blooming Phalaenopsis, they have all, sprung back into growth. This is my Phalaenopsis violacea. You can see it's creating a new little leaf. It has been staying on its place all winter, doing absolutely nothing, but still looking very handsome. And you can see it's also continuing to grow its root. This is my Phalaenopsis tetraspis. It's after I purchased it, it lost most of its roots, but you can see it's creating a new one, and it's also growing a new leaf. This leaf, you can see it's extending, vertically and then horizontally. The vertical part is that which it grew in the winter. This is my Vandaenopsis Irene Dobkin. It's what I would call a more or less highlight orchid, although it is half Phalaenopsis amabilis on the main part, and it's extending its new leaf quite nicely. This is my rescue Phalaenopsis Sogo Shito. You have probably seen it in one of my previous videos. And I've basically converted it to semi-water culture or something. It receives water, it's soaked for a couple of hours of the day. It is not growing any new leaves, and it's of course not extending its flower spikes, not that I would let it, but its leaf has plumped up quite nicely, so it's receiving the hydration it requires. And on the topic of Phalaenopsis, this is my big pink Schilleriana type Phalaenopsis, and it is extending its old flower spike. It's quite glorious. The camera does not perceives the lip a little too bright, but it's gorgeous. These new blooms which it has created on its extensions are more vivid pink. So I'm happy about that. I really love this peachy pink color which it has on its lip. So yeah, that's more or less it about my Phalaenopsis. Oh no, there's some compost going on in the background. This is my Phalaenopsis Sweet Memory Leodoro, and you may have seen it had a bloom open in one of my February update or something, I don't know. But basically speaking, it has started creating new roots. You can't really see them through the pot, but yeah, it's extending its old flower spikes. Its original bloom was here, and this is its newest flower spike, and this is the branch on one of the older ones, and another of the older ones is starting a new branch, but the tips have not extended yet. I think they will still proceed to extend because it has not begun growing new leaves. I don't know, I assume this breed creates leaves at the same time as blooms, because it's basically a summer bloomer. But we'll have to wait and see, but I'm excited. Now, on the topic of my dendrobiums, this is my Stardust Firebird. As you can see, its new growths are progressing quite nicely, but you can see there's a bit of distortion of the top leaves, and that's because of insufficient hydration. This orchid does not have a lot of roots in the pod because it has been recently repotted, but you can see it's creating a new root system. Most of these are keikis. Only this one is an actual growth. The three of the rest ones are keikis, so they're yet to reach into the soil, but I will leave them there and, you know, serve as the new basis of the plant, because this really needs to recover. You can see also over here, this orchid is truly a keiki machine. This is a keiki. You need to get rid of these on this orchid, because those keikis are going to smother the mother plant. This is my what I identified to be a Dendrobium Comet King, and it has been blooming for quite some while. You can see this is its basically last bloom. It's a bit bigger than the original blooms. It has a mild hyacinth fragrance. I'm not particularly fond about this one, but you know, it's not bad. In any case, I expect it to have more glorious blooms next year. Because this year it's creating 6 new growths, and they're progressing quite nicely. This plant really looks lively. So, what else? Something more easy. I carried my orchids from the second store of my house floor downstairs, because today is watering day, so excuse me if some of the orchids are shriveled. This is my Beallara, or Alisara Tahoma Glacier, and when this orchid is hydrated, it's fully plump. This is its new growth. It's a bit floppy, but it's really impressive. It's really quite big, you know. It's a bit unruly, but I'm not angry at it. You can see it's starting to plump up its pseudobulb, approaching maturity. I think this growth is gonna have a humongous pseudobulb, but I looked in between the leaves. It's not beginning to grow a flower spike quite yet, but I'm very much confident it will create flower spikes, because last year it created a gorgeous flower spike on this not so very astonishing growth. But this is a rescue orchid. It has already been rescued, but it had its hard time. And you can see right now, as the new pseudobulb is approaching maturity, it's beginning to create a new root system. And I'm really excited about that. I have a bit of a bad reputation on killing off the root systems on my oncidiums. Me and my mother, of course. This is one of my other rare oncidium types. This is a Miltonia Honolulu. It's a very gorgeous Miltonia with a full-on purple color of the flower. I really like it. And you can see it's beginning to grow new pseudobulbs. In total there are 4. This orchid does not have a good root system, so I'm, you know, trying to keep it hydrated enough for these new growths to be able to mature to their best capabilities. But yeah, that's about it. This is my Cattleya purpurata. Quite an unruly, huge orchid. There's nothing really that special going on, except it has opened the leaf on its new growth, and I suspect this growth will be quite small. But on the other case, of course, when I got it and reported it, it lost all of its old roots. Last year, this growth extended a little root system. You can see there's some burn damage, but the roots are alive because they have begun to extend, to branch out. That's really exciting. And I only just now noticed that the latest new growth is also created a new root system. So I suppose I am doing, you know, quite a good job with maintaining this orchid alive. And on the topic of Cattleyas, my Cattleya lobata. In my last update, its new growth was slightly less big as the previous growth. You can see it has extended quite a lot. It exceeded my expectations. It's growing far better than the Cattleya purpurata, which is quite a bit larger than it. But the difference between these orchids is that this one has a really nice root system, you know. The downside is it began to grow a second new growth at the base, but it stopped extending. I am not aware if it will continue to grow this new growth. I hope it will, but I'm happy that this new growth is quite a big improvement from the last one. No sheaths. Also, my Phalaenopsis Sweet Memory, it began creating another flower spike last year. But it stopped growing it, and it doesn't seem to be extending, but I'm keeping my hopes high. This is my Myrmecatavola Frances Fox, and all that's happening is this is its latest new growth, and it's beginning to grow a new root system, and boy, it needs one. This orchid starts creating roots after it has matured its soda bulb for me. And on the topic of Cattleya type orchids, this is my what it's called, Brassocattleya Amethyst. It's very similar to its Brassavola cucullata parent, and when I purchased it, it had a new growth. This one, the tip of it had rotted off, but since the beginning of March, the growth has begun extending, so it's still growing. Right now it's creating a new little growth, you can see here, and if you watched my tulip potting video, you might have heard that it had another tiny new growth here, and I accidentally broke it off. This growth is being creating on an older growth, while that broken off growth was created on the latest growth. So I have hopes that the latest growth will push on another new growth, but in any case, at least I still have a direction of growth. And this is my Rhyncholaelia dybgiana. Wonderful highlight orchid. It's not doing anything in particular, no sheaths, but you can see its new growths are progressing quite nicely. This orchid grows its new growths very fast. They're beginning to open their leaves, and you can see the glaucous substance on the leaves. It is there, what I believe, to protect it from excess light, because this orchid really loves intense light, and it receives direct, bright south sunlight. It has also not begun to create a root system. And that's more or less it. I will also show you my Catasetum types. So, continuing, I almost forgot to show you what my only Zygopetalum orchid is doing, and this is my Zygonisia Murasakikomachi. It is growing two new growths. They're extending quite vigorously. It had another very tiny growth here, but it rotted off. Obviously it was not able to sustain all of its new growths, because when it started to grow them, there was like 6 new growths, so that was obviously too much. You will be able to see that this orchid is creating a very nice root system. I'm really happy for it. I can already see it extending in its pot. Right here, all the old roots, I assume they are dead, but I'll have to see. Yeah, here is one of the new roots. It has a bit of a tendency to start browning, but I'm not an expert on Zygopetalums. On that matter, I wanted to ask you a bit of advice. I know that Zygopetalums are more or less semi-terrestrial orchids, but sphagnum is always the go-to medium for most such type orchids, in my experience. But look at what it's doing. This is really worrying. I know that a lot of like Oncidium type and stuff orchids are prone to all kinds of spotting, but when this orchid arrived to me, it did not have these spots, and I also don't exchange water in between my orchids, and the temperatures indoors are not very high, and the moisture levels are not low. They're around 45-50%. But in any case, these growths are looking quite splendid. The leaves are a bit stiff, you know, they don't want to open properly, but I'm not very concerned about that. Also, you can see the spots here. It's very weird. Maybe it's a virus. It kind of looks like a bacterial infection. Maybe a virus, but yeah. I'm a bit sad about this orchid, but it looks quite vigorous, you know. So let's continue with something a bit more exciting. This is my Monnierara Millennium Magic Witchcraft, the black orchid. This big pseudobulb, which is still quite tiny, it created last year, and I'm very impressed with it. And here you can see it's beginning to grow a new growth, so that's really nice. And my pride and joy, the Cycnodes Vine Delight, it is well on its way. You can see its new growth is starting to create little leaves, and I can easily tell you it's already bigger than what I had last year. It's very vigorous. It's beginning to create an amazing, vicious, aggressive root system, and I'm very pleased with that. These are its original. This is the original pseudobulb, and this is what it created at the year I purchased it. This is what it created last year. There's a big difference, and you can see it had 2 flower spikes. One of the smaller growths is beginning to kind of rot away at the top. But it's not what I would call a bacterial infection. It's a natural process. This orchid is just absorbing the energy from this old growth back into the plant, because it has no more use for this growth. I was thinking to divide this smaller growth off, so I would start growing a new plant, but now that I look at it, it's so very small. I think I'll just leave it for the next year, you know. Divide when this growth is gonna be matured. I'm going to divide it from the original pseudobulb, so I will be able to have 2 plants, which is a perfectly reasonable, dividing propagation method for catasetums. Its root system, the old one, I am thinking about reporting it and removing all of its old root system, because catasetum type orchids don't really keep their root systems for multiple years. But I wanted to show you something a bit curious. Yeah, here. You can see this is what I assume to be an old root, and you can see it has an active growth tip. So maybe it's able to continue using its old growths. By the way, I wanted to mention these smaller growths were becoming extremely shriveled, so I watered this pot very gently, and they plumped up, and no new roots have suffered from me watering the plant, and they were smaller at the time. So if you keep the old root system and water it a very slight bit when the growths are shriveling up as they are creating the new growth, I think it's no harm. But this is Cycnodes Vine Delight, maybe it's special in that regard. But that's about an orchid wrap, you know. So thank you for watching my video. Like and subscribe if you want to see more, and see you next time. Bye.